Okay, welcome everybody to our October San Francisco Marketo Engage user group. I'm trying to use this new standard naming for Marketo Engage. All right, next slide, girl. We're going to start off with some quick housekeeping, then we'll have Paul's awesome presentation and some Q&A, and we'll leave some time at the end for if anybody is trying to hire someone or anybody is job searching and wants to raise their hand about it so that we can kind of socialize you know, different job postings and, you know, try to get that networking piece in a little bit. So we are going to try using Slido today. So Slido is an app. We use it at Iterable. I really like it. It's a way to do polls. It's a way to do Q&A. So at any time during the presentation, if you have a question for Paul, you can just go to slido.com and pop in that event code and you can ask a question. Feel free to put your name to your question if you feel comfortable, but it's totally okay to be anonymous as well. And you can also go and check out the questions and upvote or downvote so we can, you know, surface the most popular questions. We'll try to, of course, get to as many as possible. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good tool for us. But also, you know, there is a chat. So if you guys want to keep chatting with each other during the conversation as well, that's also great. Let's try to keep this interactive. And as I said up at the top, if you didn't hear me, would love to see your faces. Please feel free to put on your video during the presentation. It'd be cool if you kept muted so we don't have any like weird background noise. But you know, love to see all of your smiling faces. So welcome. So many of you know me. I'm Amy Goldfine. I'm the Marketing Operations Manager at Iterable. I've been running this mug for about a year, and a new face to some of you is Lauren Robeck, who has been a mug member for several years, has been pretty active, and has now stepped up to join me as the co-leader. So really excited to have you, Lauren.
Thanks, Amy. Excited
Lauren,
to be part of it. Yeah.
And Lauren, you are the Senior Manager Growth Operations at Trey, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Next slide. So some quick house rules. I think a lot of you guys have been to mugs before. Everybody's always really great, but I like to go through these. Just remember, this is a safe space for Marketing Nation, Marketo Engage users. No self-promotion or pitching of any kind. Don't contact people without their consent. If somebody shares a use case or something specific to them, please don't share that information without their consent. You know, this is a place for learning and for sharing and not a place for selling. So I think all of you guys are probably already on Bevy if you have joined this, but just a plug that Bevy is the new home for mugs. It's mugs.marketo.com. And the really cool thing about everything being virtual is that you can sign up for as many mugs as you want. You can go to as many virtual mugs as you want. Some of you guys here are visiting from other places. I know Michael Tucker is like world champion of going to 1 million mugs. Warren, I don't think is on this call, but Warren goes to a lot of mugs. So really great way to just stay connected with all different mugs. And for those of you who are watching this presentation later on YouTube, you know, please sign up and join us to join live in the future. So a couple more advocacy opportunities. If you are not on Purple Select, that is a great way to get involved. Marketo.influitive.com. I don't think JD is here today, but he's like the king of Purple Select. You can do all these little like fun activities and you can get points and you can get all sorts of swag, t-shirts, backpacks, socks, tumblers, you name it. And currently it's still purple. So let's hope we can keep it that way for a while. If any of you guys are not on our Slack workspace, we'd love to have you. Feel free to just pop a direct message to me in the chat and I can just add you manually. That's probably the easiest way. It's a great way to stay in touch with fellow mug members, you know, learn about upcoming meetings, ask each other questions, etc. So we'd love to have you there if you're not already.
I can post a link to it in chat.
Okay.
Once Paul gets started.
That would be great.
On my screen. Cool.
We have a couple more opportunities to talk about. Summit is again going to be virtual next year. Cool stuff is coming. You can go to this website, summit.adobe.com/NA for North America. Should be really great. It's going to be even more interactive than next year. They took some feedback that we had from this year. It's going to be a little bit more like the format of Experience Makers Live or Adobe Max. So pretty stoked about that. Next thing that is coming up is Marketo Champion applications are going to be opening pretty soon in the next week or two. I'm a Marketo champion. A couple other current champs are on here. Ocean, Kimberly, Alicia was a champ last year. Really great benefits of being a champ. Alicia, you want to maybe unmute yourself and tell us why it was so great being a Marketo champion?
Yeah, sure. So I love being part of the champion program. Honestly, if I wasn't growing out my team this year, I would be doing it again. I would say like some of the benefits are obviously like just having access to all that expertise, not just about Marketo specifically, but really the entire MarTech stack. I think also you're getting really close to Marketo's roadmap and understanding sort of where the product is going, so you can think about your strategy long term. But the part that I love the most is, I guess, obviously, the community and the network. I would say, even though we're all in quarantine, a lot of the champions have stayed really close to each other's lives. We see a lot of each other on the happy hour on a weekly basis. And all of my hiring, frankly, have come out of the champion program. So I think if that's not a testament to how awesome that group of folks are, nothing is.
Thanks, Alicia. And we'll send out an email about that. We'll post it in our Slack, and you'll see it kind of around social. But if you want to really step up your advocacy and apply to be a champion, that's a great thing to do. Also, feel free to ping me or any of the other champs if you have questions about the program. Like I said, there's a lot of great mugs coming up. You don't have to memorize this list. You can go to the Bevy portal and look at the upcoming calendar. Do want to note that in November, we're going to be talking about advanced token tactics here at the SF Mug, including velocity. Super excited about that. Christina and Daryl will be talking about that, but just lots of really great sessions from some really great people. So please take a look at that if you have not already. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Paul Wilson. So thank you, Paul.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get my screen shared. Of course, every platform has a different way of doing things.
I know you guys are Blue Jeans users.
Indeed, yeah.
We'll bring you over to the Zoom side. I'm really excited to have Paul do this presentation. Paul's the Director of Marketing Automation Technology at Adobe, and he is a former MUG leader. So Paul, I feel like you're really one of us. And I know you've been in this space for a really long time. And I feel like there's, so much that we can learn from you. Just about, what it's like to manage a real enterprise stack.
Right. That's awesome. Very happy to be here. Now, unfortunately, Zoom's telling me I'm going to have to exit and then come back in.
No problem.
So bear with me, folks. One moment.
All right. Good thing I have another poll we can run. Let me see if I can get the Slido screen share going. Would love for you guys to take this poll. And we'd love to know if you have ever done a Marketo migration. Maybe you've done a huge migration like Paul, maybe you've done just a single migration, or maybe you've never done it before, which is where I am. So please feel free to pop on over to Slido and take the poll as Paul is getting his tech going. And for those of you who are just joining us, feel free to put on your cameras. Probably a good thing to keep yourself muted as we are, as Paul is presenting. Feel free to put in your camera, and please join us at slido.com and take our poll. And, as you have questions for Paul, pop them into Slido as well. All right, Paul, you're
Right.
back.
Back and set.
Okay, it looks like half the class has not done a migration before. Looks like a quarter of the people have done a single migration, and a little less than that has done a big migration like this. So kind of a good spread. So it looks like we have a good audience for this.
Awesome.
All right, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to let you take it away, Paul.
Excellent. And all right, hopefully everyone's seeing PowerPoint and
Looks great.
we're good to go. Cool. Isn't technology fun? Everything's always so easy. So we're going to tell you guys a little bit of a story and a tale of what we're working on right now at Adobe and the challenges that we're facing. But I'm trying to kind of frame it from the perspective of, you know, I've done many migrations over the last decade or so for when I was doing solution architect work as a consultant, and now, you know, bringing that into Adobe. But the challenges that we're facing are not really unique. We're doing it at a different kind of scale. So I thought I'd start with kind of resetting everybody on what Adobe looks like as an enterprise customer of Marketo Engage. So when Marketo was acquired by Adobe, I was not unique in the folks at Marketo who were working there going, don't really know much about Adobe. And immediately, obviously, we got kind of baptism by fire. And Adobe as a company is a fairly unique entity. It's a 37-year-old technology company. It's now north of 24,000 employees. We're going to be close to 12 billion in revenue this year. But it's a company that's grown through acquisitions. So there's been more than 50 acquisitions in the last 30 years. And those kinds of moments are inflection points for companies like Adobe. And in the last 4 years, Adobe has done a couple of very significant acquisitions in Magento and Marketo. And as we joined Adobe and I started looking from the inside at the way Adobe is structured, it's not elegant. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but there are a lot of messy complexities to an organization at this scale. And so we're looking to address those and think about how we can put Marketo in as a platform for marketers and sellers to take advantage of. So our goal, the Zen statement that we have, is to make Marketo that best-in-class B2B marketing platform for Adobe, and to do it in the best way that we would then be sort of happy to share our customers and prospects. So to do that in an organization that has the kind of technical debt and business process complexity like Adobe has is challenging. And it's a great kind of challenge, but it's more than you would normally anticipate if you think about doing a migration, because this migration is changing systems, it's changing marketers, it's changing processes. So it's a very multi-layered kind of initiative. And what I'm going to talk through a little bit today are how we're addressing some of those transitions. So, you know, obviously the core digital transition that we're doing is the systems. We're also changing, because of the change to systems, we're changing how we leverage and operate those systems. And then we're having marketers adapt and adopt new processes and technology. And those three components are all of what is in the mix of what it is that we're working through. And by the way, feel free at any point to come off mute and ask questions. And this is interactive. I'm happy to take any questions that come to mind. So the core goal, the outcome that we're looking to do, is to make technology as invisible as possible. So if you each kind of think about brands whose brand experience is great to you, you'll probably not be thinking about brands where there's a hiccup in any of their business processes that get exposed. So, you know, the examples that come to mind for me are brands like Apple, where the entire brand experience is focused on at every stage of the customer relationship. So from unknown acquisition through to top of the marketing funnel, into discovery and engagement, and into the sales funnel, like all of those moments, the brands that do it extremely well make technology as invisible as possible. And that's one of the things that we're challenging ourselves to accomplish, because in the current state that Adobe is in, we're not delivering on the brand promise that we want to for the B2B marketplace. So as we're going through this digital transformation, one of the goals for my organization is to try to make technology invisible and try to make the personalization and the brand experience the only thing that is really evident to prospects and customers. So while we're doing that, there are big functional changes that have to occur. So as I mentioned, recent acquisitions that need to be brought through are Magento and Marketo, but there's also, about 8 years ago, Adobe did an acquisition of EchoSign. And so that business also has its infrastructure still in place within Adobe. So what we're focusing on today, broadly, is from the left-hand side, you have the current corporate instance of Salesforce with Adobe Campaign. And that instance of Salesforce, I can tell you from more than 15 years of CRM consulting work, and having seen hundreds and hundreds of implementations of Salesforce, the Adobe instance takes the prize for the most messed up, damaged, broken implementation that I have ever seen. For those that have experienced working in Salesforce before, there are actually a maximum number of custom fields that are available to any Salesforce customer. And it's 800 is the magic number. You pay a lot of money to get there, but once you hit 800 custom fields, that's it, you're out. Adobe has maxed out the available custom fields on leads, accounts, contacts, opportunities, campaigns, and cases. So what they had to do when they needed more data that they wanted to throw into the instance of Salesforce is they started spinning up custom objects. Well, there are 1,800 custom objects in our implementation of Salesforce. It is breathtakingly messy. So that left-hand panel of, you know, what we're looking to do in our big moves, that's a very big and ugly part of this effort. But then we still have the Sign, Magento, and Marketo Salesforce instances. And all of those brands also had their own Marketo instances. So the project that we're working on right now is to migrate all of that infrastructure into Dynamics, ultimately, and Marketo. So it's a significant transformation from a systems perspective. And what it looks like in the Marketo portion of that, again, because Adobe is a complex business approaching 12 billion in run rate, there are a lot of legacy systems and there's a lot of technology that we need to leverage, where you can't just have your standard Marketo implementation with a CRM. So as you can see here, this is kind of the current ecosystem, and what you'll see here in referencing releases 1 through 4. As we're implementing Marketo, we've packaged up functionality in releases. And this perspective is where we will get to by the end of the next fiscal year. So by the end of fiscal year 21. So Marketo will be here at the center of this picture. And then all of these integration points are managed by the Adobe IT team. So they're building all of the custom pipelines that connect Marketo into all of these other platforms. We can't use the native connector for Salesforce for a number of reasons. The first being exactly what I was talking about earlier about the complexity of how the Salesforce instance has been built. We have intentional multiple leads for any individual. So if you are if you fill out if you fill out any form on adobe.com, you are created as a contact in Salesforce mapped to an account if there is one. If there isn't one, an account will be made. And a lead is created for your form completion. Any subsequent form completion creates another lead. So there are multiple leads related to any human in Salesforce. And that's an intentional process that we have to insulate ourselves from. So that's the first reason why we couldn't really work with the native connector. But the second reason is the transition to another CRM, because currently when Marketo is connected to Salesforce or Dynamics using the out-of-the-box connector, it's basically a once and done. There have been attempts and some moderate successes to decouple a Marketo instance and connect it to a different CRM. But generally speaking, the out-of-the-box connector means you can't rehome Marketo to a different CRM. So we needed to build a custom integration, a middleware around the instance to be able to move data around. And so all of the various boxes you see floating around here, like the marketing permissions table, Zoltar, which is basically a machine learning predictive scoring model. All of these custom integrations are managed by the IT organization, and my team supports this whole infrastructure. We onboard the marketers, we train, we manage it, we do the platform operations for this implementation. So that's the scope and scale of the transformation from a systems perspective. And as I said, my team, my organization works to manage that platform. So we sit between IT and marketing, and we are the enablement team to help marketers. We're the first line of support. So when they have an issue, they open cases with our team. If they have any custom advanced builds that they need help on, that's what we do. So we're that enabling layer that support the organization. Now, we also are responsible for all lead routing and lead management, all scoring, and those core responsibilities and functions that the team offer have existed in that Salesforce and Adobe Campaign ecosystem of technology. And now that we're moving to put Marketo at the center and implement Marketo as that first point through the flow of leads, it's new technology. The people on my team, I've got a couple of folks who've been at Adobe for more than 15 years. And so they have a lot of core knowledge of the business processes, and they've developed a lot of core knowledge around the technologies that exist, but they've never used Marketo. And so these transformation changes are significant, and it's part of the fun challenge for me to evolve my organization to be that best in breed example of how enterprise customers leverage a platform like Marketo and take best advantage of the technology, but also make sure that marketers are easily enabled to do great and transformative marketing. So as I said, these are sort of the way that we've structured the organization. These are the core services that we offer. We manage all of the technology stack from a procurement perspective. We have an ideas and innovation platform where marketers can share and people vote on what technologies or solutions might be needed. And that helps us prioritize our product roadmap, because in essence, we've implemented Marketo and are creating it or managing it like products. So lead management is a product, lead scoring is a product, and we have product owners, and they are understanding and planning the roadmap for what we want to see from the future, see in the future from the systems. Then obviously there's core support and platform operations. We also have a function where we do campaign operations for parts of the business that don't either have skills currently in their teams, or they don't want to have the skills. We will actually execute programs on their behalf. And then finally is data management operations. So this is sort of the core elements of what my team does. And this is a new way of organizing technology operations for Adobe. A lot of enterprise customers have done this, but it's a new paradigm for Adobe. So it's again, part of the change. And so we really need to be that enablement layer. And it's those core elements, as I've mentioned along the way today, of trying to make technology invisible, trying to deliver playbooks for marketers to be able to execute on the motions and actions that they want to do, and working with the IT organization to try to ensure that the implementation that we have is best in class for B2B marketers. all the while working through all of the data migration, data transformation, and technology migrations of those CRMs and marketing automation platforms into that single core new implementation. So all of this change at the technology layer and the technology operations layer changes what marketers do as well. And so when we started on the journey of implementing Marketo for Adobe more than a year ago, on average, it would take a marketer 6.5 to 9.5 weeks to send an email. They would need to open a ticket with the studio team, creative would need to be done. They'd need to engage with IDS, which is the information data science team at Adobe, to define the audience. They then need to work with marketing technology to get it set up in campaign. It was a long process. Transforming all of that into self-serve in Marketo is a greatly empowering motion for marketers to get, but they need to understand what the rules are, what the guardrails are, and make sure that they don't do anything that would cause issues. And I'm sure you've all received emails from Marketo over the years where we've sent, mistakes. Mistakes happen. There was a recent one that I won't highlight, but it was downright rude, and it was just missing one letter in a subject line. But these kinds of mistakes happen. So we've all been there. We've all done that. But Adobe as a brand has an extremely high standard that they want to protect. So from the studio team and the look and feel through to the content and the creative and all of that, we want to put the guardrails in place that allow marketers to go fast, but also protects them from, embarrassing kinds of mistakes. So our role is to provide them not only with the technology that does that, but with the guardrails, governance, control, all of that to ensure that they do it in a good way. Busy slide. But it's important to understand that these are the changes that marketers are expecting to be delivered because of Marketo. So improving customer experience, lead and account engagement, operational stability and agility. Like these are core benefits that Marketo unlocks in that ecosystem that I've described of a 37-year-old technology company that's trying to adapt and change the way that it's doing business. So they're good, meaty, fun challenges, but the human transformation, that behavioral change is really the most important one that we're keeping top of mind as we go through this journey. So what's next for us is completing the main core elements that I've described, and it's going to be probably another 3 to 4 years to normalize all of those transformations of CRM and marketing automation to a unified environment of Dynamics and Marketo for B2B at Adobe. Once that's done, the product is going to keep evolving over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. We'll be in, there will be new features that are coming on board. There will be changes in the way marketers want to deliver experiences to prospects and customers. So what's next for my part of the business is we need to stop focusing on the plumbing and electrical of getting things where they need to be and start thinking more about that overall design, that overall empowerment for marketers to be able to do new and creative things so that Adobe continue to lead the market in experience. And we need to do that while continuing to adapt and work through the transformations that are happening over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, because we can't stop and wait until it's all done because the business won't allow us to do that. So that's the story. That's where we're at. I'm sure there have been questions, but I've been too yammering on to see them. But if you have questions, please feel free to come off mute. And really enjoyed getting the opportunity to present to you guys, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, because this to me is the most interesting part of being able to drop into a mug like this. Is I miss the connection and collaboration that I used to get because I would have multiple customers and I'd get to hear about the kinds of things that people are working through. So hope you enjoyed this, and please feel free to ask anything you'd like to ask.
Paul, that was so great. Thank you. I think most of us are like heads are a little bit exploded from some of your diagram slides. And some of those numbers that you shared are crazy. I would love to start with some of the questions that have been posted in Slido. So forgive me, I have never actually like run Slido before, but I think you guys can all see the questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So first question, why do you create multiple leads, one for each form submission?
Great question. And I will start my answer by saying, not my idea.
Okay.
That was a part of a transformation exercise that Adobe went through about a decade ago in the core Salesforce instance. And the logical reason still persists today and will be the reason that we support multiple leads when we move to Dynamics. There are hundreds of products at Adobe, and different sales groups handle different product groups. So we needed the capacity to route an inquiry to the appropriate part of Adobe's business. So there's the part of Adobe that I'm in, which is digital experience. And that's all of the elements, like all of the brands that you know, like Magento, Marketo, Adobe Analytics, Target, like that group of Adobe products are all correlated and they're in the digital experience business. But then there's the digital media business, which is Creative Cloud, Sign, Document Cloud, like all of that part of Adobe's business. And so we needed the ability to discreetly map and route inquiries to multiple groups within multiple business units. And the multiple lead factor released us to do that. So there's a contact and account, and those persist. The contact represents the human, but the multiple leads were used to track multiple inquiries. Now, the reason they had to do one for each form submission was kind of technology limitations back in the day. There wasn't the ability to kind of have and enrich a single lead record in the platforms that existed when they built this method 10 years ago. When we move to Dynamics, we'll keep the same notion that the contact and the account are the lead objects that represent a human and the business that they work for. But a lead will represent an inquiry, like a line of interest. It's almost as if the lead is the very top of the opportunity record. So if you fill out a form and you're interested in information about Marketo, there will be a contact created, an account created, and a lead. The lead will route to the appropriate salesperson. If you come back later and fill out a webinar, sign up to attend a webinar, we're not going to create another lead. We'll enrich the lead that exists if we know what product you were interested in. So there will be multiple leads, but it won't be the same kind of, there are literally thousands and thousands of leads related to some people because they've been interested in Adobe products for a decade. They filled out a bunch of things, gone to Summit, attended webinars. It's very messy. So the construct of the data model will keep, but it's just going to be a little bit more refined. And that's the natural progression, the out-of-the-box way Dynamics likes to behave is a lead gets converted into an opportunity. So it is that top of the funnel. So anyway, I hope that answered the multiple leads.
Thank you. Okay, let's see what happens if does that make the question? Yes, okay, I did it correctly. Okay, next question is for migration. What criteria do you use when considering consolidating or replacing existing tools? Love this question.
Great question. What I've always recommended and the approach that I've taken with customers has always been begin with the business process. So the business process map is the most important first guide to the rest of your plan. So what I mean by that is if you're thinking through marketing automation platforms and you're wanting to consider, do we consolidate onto Eloqua or Marketo? What I would begin with is, what are all of the business processes that you want to support? If you describe the lead lifecycle and said, well, we want to be able to track and have clear insight into the anonymous behaviors that we see on the web. We want to entice people to convert on a forum. We want to support having virtual events. We want to support webinars. So you map out all of the business processes. And from those business processes, you build a data map which supports those business processes. And the data map relates to, well, at the anonymous phase, we need to know, IP location. We want to know company if we can. On form conversion, we want to know the date that they filled out the form. We want to know the source page that it was on. So you draw all of the data, discrete data points that you need to support the business process. And you make that fairly detailed. You go through in a very methodical way to ensure that you don't have more data than you need, because data is going to age out and become stale and cause problems. But you also don't want less data than you need, because then you can't support the business processes. You then think about, okay, so who are the people who handle the data at the phases of the business process? You work through those elements. And then finally, the last thing you think about is, what's the best technology that supports giving the data to the people at the phase of the business process that they're in. So fundamentally, I always try to look at the challenge of any technology replacement or any technology change through the lens of the business process that the technology is supposed to support. And that can be a very macro element, like I said, like Marketo or Eloqua, all the way in the lead lifecycle, or all the way as narrow as, what webinar platform do we want to use? And again, I think through it from the experience, from the business process, from what are the data points, and that really helps inform the choices around technology. I've seen so many customers get it wrong, where they pick the technology first, and then they have to morph their business processes or break their data model or do things in ways that are not optimal. So I always think it's best to begin process, data, people, and then technology.
Great answer. Thank you. I love that question. Okay. Okay, did I do this right? Okay.
What's the one thing I'd do better next time when migrating Marketo instances?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just having a little trouble moderating Slido, but I'm getting there. Yes, thank you. What is the one thing you do better next time? Thank you for your question, Kimberly.
I'd buy more time if I could. That's in every single migration project that I've been in, and I've done a lot. I have almost every time been given half of the time that I'd like to take. And that would be the one thing. But practically speaking, I would say that one thing that I would do differently in our current environment is I would get executive permission to break what is. Because in our circumstance, there are a lot of elements of the historical infrastructure that are in the way, and they are very much in the way. But the concept was just implement Marketo, move on to Marketo, and then we'll go. However, there are things that are in the way that we've had to break Marketo to be able to accommodate, and we didn't get permission at the beginning to break those things. So when you think of a migration, when you think of a project like this, think as big as you can and get permission to think as big as you can, and then move. So
that is really good advice. Thank you. Okay. Next question is, with all the connections between your tech systems, what do you do in order to catch possible breaks in integration before they cause serious damage? I feel like that is a great question we would all love to know, even for smaller instances.
Yeah, so that's a really, really good one. So one of the things that we benefit from at Adobe is a very mature IT organization. And as much as I complain about them, and as much as they're very process heavy, I've not worked with an organization that is this good at documentation ever. Everything is documented to what fields in what platform have supremacy over the matching field in another platform. What's the timing expectation in the flow of the data? They've documented every single point in their view. So I'd say, to the question, monitoring of data flow is the most critical thing that you can do as a marketing operations engineer. And I think that keeping a focus on those integration points and understanding how they are a threat to the business process that you're running is a very important perspective to keep. Document those areas of weakness. I mean, I think of one in the Marketo implementation, when we moved from the old instance to the new instance. We did that migration in 2018. The throughput of the out-of-the-box connector between Marketo and Salesforce was our Achilles heel all the time. We would have bottlenecks, we'd build up a backlog. There were points in time where it would take 18 hours for form submission to get from Marketo to be a lead in Salesforce. And knowing that there was that possible weakness and possible risk in the data integration flow between Marketo and Salesforce, having that knowledge and being aware of it was the most important thing. So as soon as you can identify where breaks might occur, that becomes a point where you monitor, and you keep monitoring that all the time. Because when that falls apart, you don't want to be sitting in a room with executives saying, yeah, we haven't been sending leads to Salesforce for 6 days. But you don't want to be that.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible situation. I hope you're not speaking from experience.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry if that brought up any painful memories. Yeah, certainly monitoring your data sync. I'm working on a blog post right now about like monitoring Marketo for like hidden errors, and there's so many things that can happen, whether the API errors or webhook errors, or just data issue errors that you won't know about unless you make sure Marketo tells you.
Yep.
That's really important to
and
do
there
that.
are good tools out there to monitor Marketo. DigitalPy has one called Omega. We implemented it at Marketo, and it was great because it provided all of the telemetry and insight that you would need at the API, program performance, sources of new leads coming into the system, all of that kind of picture. It's a great tool.
Yeah, I've heard that's good. It looks like Jeff Q in the chat just recommended Automaton, which I've also heard of.
Yep. I've not implemented that one, but it's another great one.
Yeah, it sounds like at a certain point you need a tool like that when you're getting to scale for sure. I like this next question from Frank. Does Marketo offload scoring logic and processing into a separate CDP-like engine and munge it together with other data sources?
Yeah, the answer to that one is we have hybrid, in fact, as our kind of scoring approach. There is some in Marketo scoring that we do for in Marketo behaviors that we can easily track and monitor. But yes, we also have the image that I showed earlier on one of my slides where I referenced Zoltar. Zoltar is a Adobe data science engine, data science built engine, and it takes all of the telemetry on all of the Adobe web properties. It takes all of the account behavior related to all of the contacts related to an account. It takes intent data from Bombora and Demandbase and a few others, and it pulls all of this information together to give an account score. And that account score is then leveraged to provide fit and predictive match for new records that come into the system. So yes, we have scoring in a number of places, actually.
Very cool. And several people are noting that Zoltar comes from that fortune telling machine. If you've ever seen that movie Big,
Yep.
I think that's what that's from.
Exactly.
I just watched that recently. Does not really hold up. Kind of grossed me out actually, but it's like, oof.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. When you say routing, are you assigning leads? Tips for assigning at scale in Marketo?
Yeah. So when I talk about routing, it is leads to sales. In a standard implementation, I highly recommend all lead routing happening in Salesforce. So Lean Data is a great tool for that. Marketo's implementation of Lean Data, when you looked at it, it looked like spaghetti. There's so many rules around so many things. For Adobe, we use a product called Corticon. Corticon is a business rules engine that sits outside of any CRM. It sits outside of Marketo. And so Lean Data is great for scale. In our world, we're looking at, somewhere, our universe is somewhere between 25 and 40 million records is what we're going to be managing once we have all of those 4 instances all together. So that's a scale that would break any platform like Lean Data and Salesforce. That's why we have to go out to a business rules engine like Corticon. So.
Excellent. That is really good to know how that works at scale. I think we're going to do one more question. How much longer does it take to do something like creating and mapping fields under your custom integration compared to the native sync? That's interesting.
Yeah, great question. In our implementation, if it's a field that needs to be reflected in Salesforce, it takes the IT organization about a sprint, which is a week. However, as I referenced earlier, we're out of custom fields on most of the core objects in Salesforce. So if we have to engage conversations with data architects about what custom object in Salesforce we might be able to attach a field, we could be talking months to create new data points. So our environment is problematic.
Oh my God.
Because of our history, yeah.
That sounds really complicated.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for presenting. Thank you all for your great questions. This was really fun.